So good afternoon, everyone, from the worldwide headquarters, vacant headquarters of Network in Action, coming to you during the, hopefully getting towards the tail end of this COVID crisis. Welcome, everybody. We're glad to see y'all today. We've got a really cool topic. I was looking forward to this when I heard about it, because I think all of us aspire to be one of the top 6 successful people, other than in our own mind, right? So today we're going to be joined by Justin Boyum in Austin, Texas, and Justin is a veteran who decided to become a business coach to help veterans transition, their families and other professionals, as well as non-veterans, live the best lives. So Justin, we're going to turn it over to you. We're looking forward to hearing how we can get in that top 6 most successful people in the world. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Scott. Again, I want to say that I'm honored to be invited to deliver this content to you guys. I'm very excited to talk about this. And just a little bit here, I'm going to encourage everybody to try to shut as many of your distractions off as you can. Close those emails, silence the phones, get your journals out, because we have a lot of content that we're going to cover. And it's going to move fast. I know that there's going to be a replay up for a little bit, but I also have some exciting things to kind of talk about as we go through. So I really want you guys to be able to focus as best you can. So I'm going to go ahead and start my share here and stop my video, because I want you to be paying attention to the content here, and we will get going. There we go. So again, welcome everybody. I am Justin Boyum. I'm your certified high performance coach. And in today's webinar, we're going to talk about the 6 secrets of the world's most successful people. And I imagine if you're on this call, you're already somebody striving to be your best, and you're trying to gain and create greater abundance, joy, greater, more love, more connection and contributions in your lives. And sometimes getting to the next level of success can be difficult. And I know we're all experiencing a very challenging time right now. And along with that, you might already have some of your own bad habits, maybe some of your own fears, your own judgments, and you're dealing with a lot of difficulties in your life, just like a lot of other folks are, myself included. My hand's up there with you if you're raising your hand, if that's you. But you might be looking for that new edge, looking for the next level, looking for some strategies, habits, things you can do on a daily, weekly, quarterly basis, yearly basis that really transform the quality of your life. So I am just thrilled to be here with you and talk with you about what we've learned in the secrets of the world's most successful people. So our agenda today is that we are going to talk about why most people fail. Because if we can figure that out, obviously we can get you some success and some momentum. Just kind of knowing the problems really helps. And we'll talk about the science of high performance, because reaching long-term success is possible, and reaching long-term success where you actually can still take care of your health and still have positive relationships around you is possible. And there is a true art and science behind that. So I'll be sharing with you from one of the largest studies ever done on high performance. And the good news is there are strategies there that you can implement, and there will be questions that I'll ask you in this webinar that will help you grow and really get insight into how you can reach the next level without so much burnout or frustration or challenge. And you'll learn that right here in today's webinar. So, and we'll talk about my surprising results as I got into high performance. And it's not for me to brag or here to try to convince you of anything. I'm just going to suggest that maybe there are some new ways for you to approach your day, your week, your month, your quarter, your year, your relationships, new ways to think about yourself and your own ability to get ahead that I certainly learned, and it's helped me just tremendously. So again, I'm just super excited to have you here. And I'll break it all down for you into what we call the 6 pillars of high performance. So, specifically where you'll need to focus on right now. And I'll give you a game plan for how you can implement those things and get you some of that support. And also I want to reward everybody for being here. So there will be a giveaway. And, for taking out, time from your busy schedule. I know we're all working from home, but, I think that in some ways our workload has even increased due to, everything that's going on. So I want to reward you for being here. And so what we want to talk about is, here's our quest. What do the world's highest performing, most successful, most fulfilled people do differently? And so at this point, I want you to bust out your journal, get a pen and paper, and get ready to learn a lot about yourself and how you can finally break through to the next level, because it's not always easy, and I know you know that. So clearly not a day goes by where you don't see somebody on Instagram or Facebook, your workplace, out in your neighborhood who seemingly might have it easier, and they might have had more wealth, a better car, a better career, and you might know that they've achieved things a little beyond where you're at. And I'm not saying anything negative, it's just that there's a lot of different levels of people in terms of their achievements, accomplishments, wealth, their influence, and we're always in that mix, but out of 7 billion people, we're all struggling to get ahead. And what it is about those who are at the top levels, the top 50% or 15% are doing differently. It's probably not necessarily always where they're from or how lucky they are. Maybe they have some different approaches to their life and career that generated a different quality of experience or a higher level of wealth, influence, happiness. And our quest is to figure out that today. So get your journal ready. We're going to be covering that. So, and I'd like to talk about the fact that it's not easy to succeed at the next level. You already know that. Otherwise, you'd be at even higher levels, and you'd already be at that next one. But I know you're striving and you're working hard, just like we all are. And we realize that there's really 3 huge, awful, debilitating problems. And it's why it's not easy to get ahead. And it's because we face these types of things, that we face things like fear. We want to put ourselves out there more. We want to take that risk. We want to try to get that new business opportunity. We want to hire that team. We want to go for it. We want to strive, and we want to seek investment. We want to get support, but putting ourselves out there, taking that as a risk is, again, currently, assessing, what's going on around us. It can be, uncomfortable, and it can be difficult showing up consistently as your most courageous self. And we know it's not always easy sometimes, because maybe you have stories in your head that don't support you. Sometimes maybe you've had something happen to you in the past that prevents you from really moving forward today. And sometimes in facing the unknown, we fall to the back of our heels, and we don't push as hard as we know we should or could, and as much as our family and team really needs us, because we're worried about what might happen if we really, really go for it. And maybe you might not get there, and you might lose some reputation, or maybe you can't handle the struggle or go through the effort and it doesn't turn out well. And that's a big concern that people face on a daily basis. And I definitely know it's scary. I've been there for sure. And it's scary when your back is against the wall and maybe you don't have the finances you need. Especially now, I know a lot of people are experiencing that. And it can be scary when you have a lot of obligations and you feel stressed, overwhelmed. I know it's scary when you wake up to face a day and you think, man, I've got to do this again. I already gave my everything. And so I know it's scary when you're in that place, and maybe you don't know how things are going to turn out, but you've invested this time and energy and effort into this, and you maybe don't have the support you think you need, maybe from your spouse or the people in your team or your family or people at work. And fear is a real thing, and we've got to deal with that on an hourly, daily, weekly basis, no doubt. And high performers have figured out how to deal with that. And we're going to talk about some things you can do in your psychology that might help with that. And it's a big issue. And one of the things I focus on as a coach is making sure that people deal with this and that they're conscious of it and they know where it's stopping them and that they face it as their best self. And I focus on making sure that they show up more consistently as their most courageous self. And I know that's something that you're working towards doing. So I celebrate you for being here on this webinar today. And we know another huge, awful, debilitating problem people face is fatigue. And a lot of people burn out on their way towards climbing that mountain. They work super hard, they get a lot of momentum, and they make it about halfway up that mountain, and then they're done. They're just spent. They're overwhelmed or stressed, get irritable with people around them and their family, and they stop feeling that they can make it through the day. They don't feel like they can have the mental awareness or the mental focus or literally just the physical energy. But sometimes sometimes fatigue isn't that you didn't sleep enough last night, though a lot of people don't take care of their physical body. We'll talk about that too. But high performance definitely demands a lot of energy, as you'll learn. And a lot of people, they're not physically fatigued. They don't want to work out, or maybe they don't have the right nourishment, or not sleeping, or maybe their kids are loud and they're not sleeping, so you can't sleep, and you put a Y in the chat. If that's you, I've got a couple small kids at home. I know that I know that can be something that holds you back there. But a lot of this can be emotionally fatiguing. You can be drained. You have so much stress for so long, or sometimes they don't have enough momentum that they wanted, or maybe they have a lot of what they wanted and it brought a lot more overwhelm, and they're juggling more than they thought. They're fatigued and don't know how to handle it. And high performers have to figure out how their psychology and their physiology can come together to help them deal with this issue. And we'll talk about that today, because another huge, debilitating, awful problem, I mean, if you're feeling the fear and fatigue, then you're probably also frustrated, where maybe you feel like you've been beating your head against the wall the last couple months, and you're not experiencing the momentum towards your goals that you deserve, and you're doing a lot of things, but they're not paying off right, and it's making you restless, it's making you question where you are, it's making you just frustrated with other people around you, it's hurting your relationships. And we have to talk about fear, fatigue, and frustration. And I talk a lot about that as a high performance coach. I deal with these issues on a day-to-day basis with real people. It's my job. It's why I'm doing this webinar for you. And I hope to provide some insights that help you deal with these, with these issues and get ahead, because you deserve it. And again, I want to celebrate you for being here, because I know that these are not positive things to talk about. But let's work through them together, and let's really discern what makes a difference in you moving ahead. So what I'd like to ask is, how do the world's most successful people overcome fear, fatigue, and frustration, and implement the right strategies and habits to dramatically advance their lives and careers? And it's kind of like this. It's really about mastering what we call the high performance practices or habits. But before I tell you those things, I just got a couple simple things while we're on this webinar together, some housekeeping items. And the first thing is that, well, there is going to be a replay, but this is going to come back into play later. I've got some things later that are going to kind of have some timing on them. And there will be some Q&A at the end. I plan to leave some time if you have some questions or some burning issues that you've got going on. Maybe we can do a little Q&A. Or if you have questions about any of the content that I have, we can certainly approach that at the end. But and there will be that giveaway. I want to make sure that I reward you for taking the time here. And you can post questions in the chat, but I might not see them until the end. I think there's a Q&A spot, and Daniel will send those to me at the end, and we'll get it to as many of them as we can. And skepticism is okay. I think it's cool to question anything that I say. I just want you to ask, is this true or important in my life right now? Just kind of try to be open to it and see where this can apply for you. And I want you to also ask, what would happen if I really focused in this area? Because in personal development, we can talk about tons of different areas, and we're going to hone in on some that are proven by research to really move the needle, and that really matter. And so I want you to explore each of these areas we bring up, and also think beyond yourself. Ask yourself, how might improvement in these areas help me, but also my family, my team, my career, mission, my overall life goals? And, because personal and professional development, should really be approached holistically. And you and I both know that a lot of people who succeed at their career, but maybe it was at the cost of their marriage or relationship with their kids or their health, or, their personal fulfillment and path, maybe their spiritual path. And they did it because it was a job and they did okay at it, but they didn't really feel alive. So let's think holistically. And I would really, again, I want to honor you if you just stay open to maybe some new ways of getting ahead, because while your current thinking and your current behavior got you this far, what will get you to the next level is sometimes changing up the mindset, adding new habits, approaching life in new courageous ways. And obviously we've got some work to do there, but let's follow the process, and trust me, trust the process, and let's see where we end up at the end. So ask any questions you feel like on the way, but we'll get them to the end here, or write them down if you want to ask them at the end. And so first thing, is I want to talk about who this won't help. And it won't help the yeah guy who knows everything, but doesn't have the discipline to truly implement with consistency and excellence. And sorry about that. My mic went out on me. So, and sometimes, you probably heard this phrase before, common sense is not always common practice. And so, try not to be one of the people who says, yeah, I've heard this before. Listen, and personal and professional development, there's not like a ton of new ideas out there every single year, but there's always new research, new distinctions, new approaches that can really move the needle. And we all get caught up in, and we get busy. So there's no way is it real that every one of us is doing everything. And you're not necessarily doing everything. I know that I constantly have to work on my professional development too. Isn't that true? So maybe I can add some elements today to the most important areas that if you did focus there, you get the real greatest bang for your buck. So be a yes person, listen and be willing to apply. And instead of being the dismissive person. And I think people who are more disciplined than those who are dismissive get ahead. And I also say, this is probably not going to help the excuse guy, who always finds reasons not to take action. And, would say like, hey, you don't understand my community, or you don't understand where I'm at, or you don't understand this. But look, when the advice is good, you can kind of get into trouble there. So just listen for what's true and what might help you versus thinking about 50 other contexts that maybe it's not true. And what matters is if you focus in this specific area, would it move the needle for you? And not where you have been or a super specific thing about yourself, but the reality is sometimes it's just important to get moving again. And so this is also not going to help the fear guy, or excuse me, the fear guy or gal. And who's not going to try new things. It just says, well, this is the way it's always going to be. Nothing's ever going to change. And they mask their certainty that nothing will ever change when the truth is they're just scared. Like I said, fear is a big issue. And so I just want to show that I'm cheering you on no matter where you're at. And the last person is the person who says, I don't want to change. Who's trapped today, because ultimately, if you're going to reach the next level, you have to have the ambition for the next level. I can't want it for you more than you. You've got to be there for it. And so you've got to be a person that says, I want change. I'm looking for transformation. I'm open to breakthroughs, and I'm excited for discovering something new. And if you're that person, this will definitely help you. And so let's get back to the quest. What do the world's highest performing, most successful, most fulfilled people do differently? And so let's talk about what's not working. And you probably already do this stuff. What leads to, initial success is not sufficient for long-term success. And you might recognize some of this. So you might think about like sticking to it, or, hey, just get started. Focus on your strengths, be passionate, work hard, be grateful. And, this is all still good advice, right? But sometimes what leads to the initial success is not sufficient for long-term success. And because most people already did start and they did do like hard work and they're passionate and they care what they're good at and they stick to it in that rut and they practice, but they don't necessarily win the championship, right? And they're grateful, but they might not be as abundant or wealthy as they want. And they've stuck to it, and sometimes they've stuck to it for years, at the cost of their own dreams and their own real desires. And so it's not this is bad advice. It is good advice. This advice gets a lot of people to I'd say maybe level 1 success, but you want more than that. And you've probably already tried, many things. And I know a lot of people who do work hard and they're passionate, but they're broke. And I know a lot of people who know what their strengths are, but they're in a rut because they're doing something that, maybe they're good at it or they fell into it, but they're not willing to challenge themselves and really go to the next level like you are. And I know a lot of people who are truly, soulfully, deeply grateful for life, but their family deserves and needs more. And frankly, they need more and deserve more. And so sometimes, again, advice isn't sufficient in this regard. And so you have to ask then, well, how do you reach the next level of success and abundance, while avoiding the burnout and false obligations? And that's what I want to teach today, based on the world's largest study of high performers. And so we want to talk about that. And so I don't know if you know who this is. This is Brendon Burchard. You might know him. He's on the cover of Success magazine. He's a 3-time New York Times bestselling author. He's a CEO of the High Performance Institute. He's one of the most influential leaders in personal growth. He's coached, high-level people like Oprah and her team and some others. He's the world's highest, leading high performance coach. And he's one of my personal mentors. And so what they did is they ran a study to start to answer these questions, like why do some individuals and teams succeed more quickly than others and sustain that level of success over the long term? And and then, of those who pull it off, why are some miserable and others happy on the journey? Because I'm sure, if, put that why in the chat if you knew the person who's out there crushing it in their career, but they're jerks, right? and so we're trying to figure this out. And so, and also, what motivates people to reach for the higher levels of success in the first place, and what kind of habits, training, and support help them to continue to improve. And so here's how the Institute found the answers. What they did was they took all this data that they're collecting over their assessments and the people in their following, newsletter subscribers, and they conducted global surveys, one-on-one interviews, they had literature review, peer-reviewed stuff, insights from measured high-performance coaching sessions, empirical results from training. And what they found was there's about a little over 100 performance variables, and that's a lot to be able to see if we can, implement this for everybody. So they wanted to kind of break that down. And so what they did was they started looking at which habits are deliberate, meaning are the people who are successful doing these habits on purpose? Can we observe it? Are they malleable? Meaning, can they change? Can people improve upon them? Can you train them? Are these habits effective across domains? And out of over 100 different performance variables, they identified 6 habits that make the difference, and they call them the high performance habits. And they found that in a person's personal life, they had to consistently seek clarity about who they are and what they wanted to achieve. They had to generate energy sufficient to succeed, and they had to raise necessity, which is a way of saying that they had to make sure that they were constantly raising the bar of their own motivation. And they had to know their why and really go after it. And they had to make success necessary. In their social lives, they were being very productive in their careers or projects, fields that mattered the most for them. And they did develop influence with other people around them. And they had to demonstrate courage. And this is like the big picture of what they found. And of course, they had to define it and go deeper. And basically, they found that high performance can be defined as, succeeding beyond standard norms, like so above the standard of what you'd expect, and consistently over the long term. Means the high performers were very consistent in their behaviors and their habits, again, over the long term. And while they were succeeding, they maintained well-being and positive relationships. So if you're somebody who thinks I have to succeed and compromise my health and my relationships, that's just not true. And here's what they're basically saying is that high performance feels like the full engagement, joy, confidence that comes from giving your absolute best. And I bet you're feeling engaged in the moment. You're having fun. You're confident in who you are. So the question, of course, is how do you get there? And the findings of what most people think is that high performance, again, it's not really strongly correlated with age, gender, nationality, intelligence, your personality, your strengths, years of experience, or even the compensation. And so like I said, let's talk about like what really gets you to high performance. And so when we start talking about that, some people say, well, I'm not, creative enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have these strengths, or introvert and don't get paid enough. I'm too old. And those things end up not being really important. And when it comes to reaching the next level of success, meaning that these things can actually be overcome if you identify them as a deficit, because there are other things that lead to high performance, like the habits we talked about. And so often often people think it's just about their strengths. So I want to cover that too, because it's not all about strengths. And so you can have all the strengths in the world, but without habits, you don't get things done. So, the question that high performers ask less often is, who am I and what am I good at? And more often, what's required to be of service here? How can I grow into that or lead others to deliver service? And what's necessary for you to succeed at the next level. And that's why you're here. And again, so I just want to honor you and appreciate and celebrate you for being here. So with all this research behind us, the question remains, well, so what? the real questions, once you know all that research, still revert to these types of questions. And how did high performance actually get that way? How did they develop those habits in the first place? And how do they keep growing and succeed over the long term? And that's what I promised to share with you. And so I wanted to share with you the 6 pillars of high performance and what they did. And I'd love to tell you about my story first and my results. And we'll talk about a game plan, and I'll get back to that giveaway. And so what I want to do here, and I don't know if you can see me here, I want to speak directly to you. As Scott mentioned, I'm a veteran from the U.S. Army, and I got in. I'll be completely honest with you. I wanted to serve, and I took an ROTC scholarship so that I could, get my education and then get into the military and really start to discover who I was. And I got in as a logistics officer because I'm really actually very good with numbers. It's always come easy to me, and so moving people and equipment from place to place just made the most sense for me. And I had a very wonderful experience in the military, even though admittedly getting out of college and going right into being an officer, I felt a little green, but I definitely experienced a lot of professional growth. But it came time after a few years, after 5 years of active service, to separate. I was, young and married. We were thinking about having a family. We want to have some stability. So, and at that point, we had been drawing down the military, and it was time to just make a change, see if we can establish, kind of our own identity. So, again, as a logistics officer, I thought for sure the place for me was to get into logistics in the private sector. And when you go looking for something, you can certainly find it. And I found my way into distribution operations for a large, retail and logistics company. And while I definitely was able to immediately learn a lot and have some success, I just wasn't really feeling very fulfilled. There was some different value sets, and I was succeeding fine, but it wasn't for me. And then I ended up spending the next few years kind of repeating that cycle, going like, well, maybe this will work for me, or maybe this will work for me, and trying different industries and different organizations. And eventually I had to point the finger back at me, because I had been one of those people who was sacrificing my health. I'd gained a lot of weight, wasn't quite on the same page with my spouse anymore. And I got to say, it was not a fun place to be. And, finally, when I made the decision to start pursuing my own professional development and personal development and get into high performance, it really did save me. It saved my career, my marriage. Now we have kids. It certainly helped me with the relationship of raising young ones, and it probably saved my life. And I was able to find purpose again, and that was really what was missing for me. For the military community, when we get out, it's just a little bit different. Everybody's wearing the same uniform when you're on active duty, and even if you don't necessarily get along, you're all wearing the same uniform. Like I said, you all have kind of a common goal, and so we all kind of move in the same direction. And it's a different culture. And when you get out, that culture and that community is kind of gone, and it takes a little time for you to be able to identify. So that's why I got into coaching, was I wanted to be able to help people really define their own mission and purpose. And I found that that's really not necessarily a sole struggle for the military. That's a struggle for everybody. And so, when we think about pursuing that high performance, what I found with my clients is that, the experience is there's always one of these things. There's like a recent history. Things have just completely changed for some reason. There's maybe a pivot where they have to make a change, or things have not worked out how they hoped, or maybe they're even in their darkest moments. And once they start focusing on things like high performance, and I'll use one example. I have a client who, had a small business here in town, where they were doing great, billing over $1 million in their first year of business. And because he got into that because he didn't like working for, the corporate environment. He was killing himself for somebody else's dime. He wasn't really passionate about the industry he was in, wasn't fulfilled. So he got into his own business. And then what he found was that he was working twice as much to make not really any more money, not able to spend time with his family. And so we had to start working on, what are you going to do to move the needle? And even in just 3 short months, he was able to dial his hours back to a normal work schedule. He's actually able to take vacation, which he hadn't done in over a year. He was working, like I said, probably half as much, but he made 30% more in his business, which means he was able to invest more in his relationships, in his business, and scale, and that was, and he's just happier doing it. And so that's what most people experience. And so again, I want to get back to enough about me here, and the real questions remain: how did high performers get that way, and how did they develop those habits, and how do they keep growing, succeeding long term? And that's where we're going to talk about the 6 pillars that I mentioned earlier. And so the answer is that successful people sought breakthroughs, training, and coaching in 6 critical areas, what we call the high performance pillars. And they had to master these. And I want to dive into each of them, but it's about mastering, here's what they are here, sorry. And it's about mastering your purpose, your presence. How do you get from where you are to where you want to go? And the first one I really want to highlight is psychology. And that's what you do with your mindset and your behavior, thoughts, feelings, and actions, and why you do those things. It's physiology, where making sure you have the energy, not only physically, but also taking care of your mental health, and you're being productive, and mastering the area of productivity. It's about mastering the area of people, so developing the people skills you need in order to get people to believe in you and buy from you, support you, invest in you, and about mastering your purpose and understanding what really brings you alive and staying on track and showing up in full presence every single day as your best self. And I want to dive into each of these areas to give you a little flavor of what high performers are asking themselves and what they're working on. So you might draw this out in your journal as we go through this, because we're going to spend a little bit of time in each of these areas and to give you your own breakthroughs right here on this training. And again, stay with me, because at the end we'll do some, we'll do that giveaway and maybe do some Q&A and hopefully give you a game plan to see how this can apply to you specifically. So let's jump in. Let's talk about psychology. And what I want to do is I ask you a few questions. Number one, am I living my truth? Do my thoughts serve me? Do I feel the confidence and joy I wanted at this stage of my life? And I certainly can relate to that one, because that's where I was just a few years ago. When I was trying to figure out the industry and realizing that this was missing for me. And one thing that can really help is, what 3 words really define who I am, as a person, and, or maybe the person that I want to be, and am I living those words congruently and consistently? And, if you're not living your truth, then probably thoughts are getting your way, and you probably don't have the confidence that you deserve. And if you're not living your truth, then probably you're not feeling the joy about your life at this stage and that you deserve. And so think about it for a moment. Are you living your highest and best self? And so, the next thing I want to talk about is physiology. Do I feel an extraordinary level of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy? And it's kind of like your physiological power, to get things done. And so on a scale of 1 to 10 over the last 6 months, and again, take this note for you, have you had the physical energy you need to succeed? How about your mental energy? So your mental energy is being impacted by your physical energy. Your physiology is impacted by your emotions, and your emotions are also impacting your physiology. Isn't that right? Like a little vicious cycle. And how maybe at a soul level, do you have that vibrancy and pop that life deserves? Do you feel it in your whole body? Are you sleeping, eating, exercising, hydrating, gesturing, speaking with passion? Generating the emotions and power that you need? Or are you just kind of going through the motions and a little bit physically? And maybe you're tired. And a lot of the coaching that I do is helping people stay a little bit more disciplined in this area. helping them gain new insights and how they can take better care of their body, and so that they feel both not only physically charged, but emotionally charged. And it's a big part of coaching, and you know that, but because a lot of times I bet you set some big goals in your health, but you haven't been able to meet them yet. And that's sometimes one of the greatest reasons to have a coach, is just somebody to keep invested in you, and that's in kind of that judgment-free zone and wants you to stay disciplined and succeed. And that's what I do a lot. So, and let's talk about productivity. Some of the questions for you here: are you doing your life's work or just busy work? I work with some people who are really trying to work hard, but sometimes they're just working hard at the wrong things. And they've never been really clear about how to evaluate the right opportunity for themselves and their family at this stage of their life. And so, yeah, they're good at tasks and checklists or to-do lists, but maybe they're not on the right path. And so another question is what would it take for you to, 5x your productivity each week, based on where you are? Because maybe you're on the path and you're going the right direction, but you find you're maybe distracted or unfocused, unmotivated, and what's affecting your productivity. And so as a coach, we have to work through that. And, I'd love to be able to help you identify what major projects you should achieve in the next 90 days. And so maybe as you're thinking about this, you could write that down. Hey, this is my number one thing here, or maybe my top 3 things. And how do you achieve those projects with real excellence so that you move forward at full pace, full speed, at, full capability? And sometimes it just takes somebody to talk with around regularly to find out hey, where are you? Where are you going? Let's work on this area, and let's get you a breakthrough here so you can speed up. And that's what I love about high performance and being a coach, is that I get to do that. And the next area we want to talk about is people, specifically people skills. So they ask, maybe, have I developed the people skills needed to serve and lead? So we all have to develop ourselves so that we can interact with each other better. And I bet there's people in your life you really care about who you'd love to have maybe a little bit more patience with, or maybe listen to them better, understand them, maybe know how to validate and motivate. And I'm sure your business requires you to persuade and sell and influence people. So don't measure yourself here. Are you doing well in this category? And maybe another question you can ask yourself is, can I influence people and persuade people to believe in me, to buy from me, to follow me, invest in me, support me? And because sometimes you need new conversational strategies. Sometimes you need new ways to approach someone who has been resistant. Sometimes maybe you just need new strategies and tactics of what to say, when to say it, how to go into a persuasion situation, and how to do it well, and how to follow up effectively. And all the struggles that we experience around our people skills indicate that maybe you just need someone to talk to, or a new strategy. And that's what I love doing as a coach. It's what I love about high performance. And the last question in this area that I often ask my clients here, this is a really popular one that I like to stay connected with, is are you being the role model that your family needs you to be, and or your peers need you to be, or that your company needs you to be? The people that count on you, are you showing up for them? Are you giving that A+ effort? Are you able to maintain that congruence? And how would you stay on your path but still be a great servant? And sometimes it's necessary just to talk through that. So let's jump into presence. I think that's a logical jumping point here. Is, are you fully engaging life? All right, and again, this is something that you might want to think on a 1 to 10 scale here, 10 being truly engaged. But are you being fully engaged? Just be honest with yourself there, and think about maybe what am I avoiding? Right? Sometimes there's just either hard conversations or things that need to get done, but you're avoiding them because it's difficult. Have you been avoiding that, again, the tough conversation with your spouse, or maybe with an employee or kids, or are you clear about those fears and frustrations, and do you know how to overcome them? And who needs you on that A game right now? And sometimes we can go through emotions in our life because we're happy about who we are and we're good at it, but sometimes we decide to show up as our best, highest performing self when we've got somebody else to serve, and when the kids need us, when the spouse is relying on us and our back is against the wall, we need to show up for them day after day and reconnecting with that so you can show your best self with everything. And all of this, I really do love this next question, is what would life feel like if I was more in the now? And, you know, because it can be really easy to kind of be trapped in the old stories or obsessed with tomorrow and the future, and it kind of keeps you from being engaged today. And you might not feel that level of positive emotional energy that you deserve. And you might be kind of going through the motions again, like, and a lot of people kind of get stuck in that and wake up, eat breakfast, go to work, come home, have dinner, watch TV, go to bed, and then repeat that cycle. And it can be easy to get in that. So really connecting with, you know, how to be present now is really something that can truly help, you know, manage your psychology and that physiology and productivity and, you know, those people skills when you consistently show up. And all of these things really do play together, and they really come together with your purpose. And so, you know, the question here is like, how do I stay on my unique path despite all the distractions? And so what we talked about, right, is purpose is really a big piece of the puzzle. It was a big piece of the puzzle for me. Again, just kind of doing a lot of busy things that in places that I wasn't feeling that passion. And I'm not saying that, you know, for me, the corporate environment wasn't right, but I certainly believe that if I'd had some of this training before I got into that environment, I would have certainly been able to fulfilled. And so sometimes it's about staying on purpose and staying on the right path despite all of the distractions we have of emails and marketing and this, that, and the other. And it's just, again, stay connected on what's the right answer here. You know, how do I know what that path really is? You know, when should I quit something versus when should I stick with it, right? Because, you know, one thing I had to learn, and I know a lot of my clients have to learn, is just because somebody wants something to be on your plate doesn't mean you have to accept it. And just because it has been on your plate doesn't mean you need to keep it there, because there's nothing on there that you don't choose to let it be there. And you know, what makes me, you know, feel fully alive so that I can give. So let's talk about the game plan. Let's talk about how important these 6 areas of your life are. They're kind of everything, right? And so what's your next step in accelerating your momentum towards success and fulfillment? And so I'd like to find out together. And so here's our giveaway is I want to spend, you know, I want to offer this as like a 60-minute session to diving into your goals in each of these areas and more. And let's create that high performance blueprint. And so if you're absolutely ready for the next level of success and you have the people counting on you, and right now there's a lot of people that might be counting on you, and it's a high stress environment, and maybe it's time to seek your high performance coaching. And so what I'd like to do is offer you, like, I want you to go to this link here and, you know, schedule a free high performance roadmap session. And this is going to be a limited offer. And I want you to use promo code NIA, and I'll bring this slide back up here in a second. But I want to tell you what you're getting here. First is you're going to get 1 hour of high performance coaching in a roadmap session, which is normally a session that I offer at $200. And I want to give you the high performance strategy assessment. So where you can really deep dive on your own, and this is something you can keep for yourself so you can measure yourself later. And I want to give you a pillars of high performance worksheet, kind of go back to the things that we've covered so far, that you can take home with you and be able to ask yourself some of these questions before you start a project or maybe before you start the day, to really help you connect with that clarity and give you that energy to get things done. And I want to give you my best weekly review template. I find that this was a game changer for me when I started really measuring my performance on a weekly basis and helping me figure out what was, and it starts over time to help you really figure out what's important in your life. And again, that you know, what can stay on your plate and what should be on your plate. And this is a really good template to help you with that and really measure how you're getting things done. And that's usually a total value of $500, but for everybody that schedules it today, it's going to be free. There is limited space. The opportunities, you do need to schedule that within the next 2 weeks if you're interested. And there's no pressure. You don't have to do that. It's going to be a sales-free environment. I just want to be able to provide that value to everybody on this call, and I want to honor you again for being committed to your high performance and being your best self. And so I want to just bring that as a value today, as a thank you for allowing me to share my story and share what I do in this forum. And so I want to bring this slide back up for you again. You do need to schedule that within the next couple of weeks, and there are limited time slots. And go ahead and use promo code NIA, and they'll ask you some questions there, and also ask for your email and stuff, so I know where to send those bonuses to. And I know this will be on the replay as well, but you guys were here live, so I want to offer that to you. And at this point, we do have a few minutes left, and so I would love to, if there are any questions, I would love to answer any of them right now. Is there anybody who has either a question about what I've talked about, or maybe you have a question about your own performance right now, or what can move the needle for you? I'm happy to answer that now.
Okay, and you guys could all feel free to chime in on the chat as well if you don't want to unmute. We're going to keep the chat open, available to anybody who has any questions or comments they want to chime in on.
Yeah, so just put a Q in the chat, or send that Q&A to Daniel. If you have one, we'll take them as they come in, as long as we have this scheduled, I think, till 2, if I'm right, Daniel. And so if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do so. And again, I want to honor everybody for being here on this call. I hope that you got a lot of this. My goal was just to bring some new ideas to you and help. And certainly, if I can help you on a one-to-one basis, I'm happy to do that as well.
Hey, Justin, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Is there a balance to, in a slow time like this, you tend to start thinking about how you can reinvent the wheel and do some of the things that make you productive during normal business environment. You kind of start rethinking things. Maybe I can do this a little bit better. Maybe I can do it differently. And sometimes you've tried that in the past, and it doesn't work for a reason. Should you just kind of stay the course with the way that you did things, or like where's that line that you don't want to put all your chips in and try and force something to work when it's not a proven way of doing things? Sometimes you just need to accept the slowness, and it's just going to be a little bit more time between deals, and just kind of stay the course.
Sure, and that's a great question. So I want to make sure that I understand it correctly. So what you're asking is that maybe you've got a strategy that you're trying, and it's not necessarily providing the results that you hoped for, but are trying to figure out when should you stick with it, or maybe try something new. Is that the question?
So, in a typical day during a normal economy, maybe I make 50 phone calls in a day, or 25 phone calls in a day. Well, now that it's slow, I'm going to ramp up those efforts and do 100 phone calls in a day. Or maybe focus on different marketing strategies. How important is it to just, ramp up what you were doing previously versus trying new things?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. Certainly you have to go off of the data that you have. But oftentimes when things are slow, when you're seeing that things aren't working, that's maybe a time to start thinking about, is this serving me? Or is there a new way or an alternate way to think about the productivity? So, you might think about in a scenario that you do 50 calls a day. And usually in a sales environment, once you get to a comfort place, that like if I make 50 phone calls, that's going to lead to, 5 conversations or 10 conversations, and of those conversations, 1 or 2 are going to convert, or however it is, and you kind of know what your number is. And that's certainly a way just to kind of do some volume that would help. But what I'm suggesting is starting to think of new ways to either approach that productivity, or maybe even start thinking about, that might be more of, something that you need to think about like an influence discussion, right? How can I have more productive phone calls on those 50 rather than make 100, right? And so there's different ways. You've got to decide what's important for you. And so what I would ask is really, what are you trying to accomplish?
I appreciate that. That makes sense. Very clear.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I see your comment here, and I really, again, I appreciate you for giving that. Thank you. Again, I loved my time in service, and I'm happy, and I love being able to support my fellow veteran community as well. So really appreciate the thank you.
Any other questions?
It doesn't have to be necessarily a question about the content I have. It can be more like, Stephen, if you have a specific scenario where you're finding some struggle, I'm happy to see if we can explore that right now.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How do I pronounce that? Is that Delphina?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I had quite a good question, but I'm trying to word it right.
Okay. Well, let's just go for it, see what happens.
I'm one of those who I'm great at sales. I'm good at the sales part, but it's more of the behind the scene admin type thing that I struggle with. And because I struggle with that, sales has, you know what I mean? I have to do like, there's back end work and things like that. When I get to doing that, I don't go out and sell.
Sure.
You
Okay.
know,
I get it.
that's where I'm struggling.
Okay. So I would think that this touches on a couple areas for me, Delphina. And so, and this is something that I struggled with as I got into business as well. Especially if you're in a solo business, right? Being a good communicator and everything's great, but if you don't have a great process on the back end, that can obviously hurt the bank account. So you need to get good at the admin, of course, right? So this kind of touches on a few areas. One, it's going to be a clarity discussion, right? And we're going to talk about the importance of what you're trying to achieve. And then on the back end, we're going to talk about productivity. So what I would suggest in this scenario is like, well, the first question I was asked is, what strategies do you have in place that are serving you?
Well, I can't find the answer to that one.
Okay.
Well, when I'm out there selling, I feel great and fired up and everything, but then there's that admin stuff, and then when I get stuck doing that, then my sales have gone down because I'm doing that. But
and how does that feel?
Terrible. I feel terrible in so I feel like I'm a ping pong ball going to different directions and getting nothing done.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally understand that. So let me ask you this: what strategies maybe have you thought of that you haven't tried yet?
What has worked, and this is crazy, I have thought of, I'd even asked Daniel before, and sorry, Daniel, I haven't gotten back to you about that office, because when I'm away from the house, that's where I feel like I'm bouncing more when I'm there, because I can do more there, but then I don't go out and sell.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm out there in sales, sometimes I'm sitting in my car doing the admin work. But then the day is gone. Then I think, oh, well, it's late now. I got to go home. But I did admin stuff in my car. I mean, somebody called me the parking lot lady because I'll pull over to the parking lot to send the contract.
I've been there too. I get it, right? Especially when you're the solo. What do you do, Delphina, if you don't mind me asking real quick?
I sell alarm systems for
Alarm systems,
360. Okay. So it is a company I work for, 100% based commission.
Yeah.
So, and I'm
So I would say the admin is very important.
Oh yeah. So they expect me to send this and then certificates and things that go behind it, and my commissions and everything. So I love the company. I love my job and everything, but it's with as far as family, admin, work, action, all that stuff is taking a toll, and not sure how to handle it. Sorry.
Okay. Well, so there's a couple things there. What I would suggest here, and this is just me as a performance coach here, I would start to identify what are your real critical tasks. And obviously sales is one of them, right? And it sounds like, are they giving you leads, or are you really responsible for your own business?
No, they do send leads, and what I'm grateful for is because I close them.
Sure.
So that's why I feel comfortable with selling. But then when they send me those leads, that's more work added on there. And it's not like I can't do it, but when I do come home or go do something else or go to a meeting, things like that is when I need to be doing other things, and my mind is like on other stuff. So
Sure.
Um,
Well,
oh,
here's what I would suggest here, and you might already do this, and this is just like a high performance tip here when it comes to productivity that I talk a lot about with my clients is holding space. So I would identify, in a given week, let's just assume you're working 40 hours, and you might be working more than that. But you know what the critical tasks you have are, right? Calling out on leads, closing sales, and then you need to give yourself some space, and what we call like blocking time. And say from this time to this time, I'm doing the admin. I have that on my own calendar just for email. Like I don't do email all day. I keep it shut and I only open it at certain times, right? Because email is a really big distraction for a lot of people. So I hold space on my calendar, and that can sometimes just give you clarity. And it's not necessarily you need to keep it that way as the gospel of your calendar, right? But just holding that space there, you can certainly move things, but I need to have 5 hours a week for admin, right? And you plug that in on your calendar, then it's protected. And because you have space for it, it can kind of help give you that clarity and confidence, and you don't have to be stressed about it because there's a place for it. Does that make sense?
that does. The stress is what's causing this problem, because really it's
Absolutely.
probably I'm making how do they say it? A mountain out of a molehill, and
Yeah.
because of no clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I really appreciate you, Delphina, for asking that question. It's a great question. That's a common thing. You got to figure out how to get things done, right? There's only so many hours in the week. So yeah, absolutely. I would give that blocking time a chance there. And I'm certainly happy to discuss that with you in more detail if you want to go to and take me up on the offer there to schedule that session. We'll really dive into productivity and figure out what we can do there.
I'd love to. I already took a screenshot of it.
Well, yeah, make sure you try to schedule that today. Like I said, there are limited time slots. I don't know how many people will be taking me up on that, but I wanted to try to hold as much space as I could for you guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Delphina.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can get some of the other questions here. Let's see. Okay, so Wendy asks, when someone comes to you, what are you finding is the most commonly overlooked obstacle for their performance? I would say the most common obstacle for performance is clarity. And even people who think that they're really clear, and I could put myself in that boat, a lot of people have just kind of a general overall idea of what their real goals and purpose are. And that would probably really be where I say the difference is purpose. And so if this is, and again, this is just for me to you guys, if you find yourself in that boat that maybe you're not moving forward, I would suggest maybe taking a few minutes to actually write out your own purpose statement. And that's something that I commonly recommend and it's something that we don't necessarily think to do. Like a lot of companies, when you go into the lobby, when we could still go into lobbies, you would see like their mission statement, or you might see it on the website, right? And so that everybody in the company and everybody comes to the stores really kind of understands where everybody's going for, but we don't necessarily do that for ourselves. So I would suggest oftentimes, hey, have you ever written out a purpose statement? And if they haven't, kind of go through that exercise. Let's see, what are some of the people who we consider high performing and possibly successful that have used your other life coaches to jumpstart their careers or life callings? I would, I don't know how to pronounce that name. I'm just going to call you RG. RG, I would say anybody that you've seen in the business world at a high level that you look up to has had a coach at some point, specifically in high performance coaching. Like, so for instance, like Brendan Burchard, who is, he's a big name in the coaching space. He's been coached by, or he's been mentored by like Tony Robbins, right? And Brendan, at this point, he's probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know he's not working with anybody privately within his process for like less than $250,000, right? So, but he moved up from that. He didn't start there, and we can keep this to sports, right? Most of the time, people go, what do you mean by high performance coaching? And a lot of people kind of equate to athletics. So I like to use this example. But if you can think back to maybe when you're in grade school or college, or last time that you were in some kind of competitive, athletics at any level, did you have a coach? And well, yes, you did. Did you think that you performed better because you had a coach? Yes. Well, that's the same thing with life coaching or business coaching or sales coaching. It's just having somebody who's kind of like not there to judge you, but there to push you and to give you perspective outside of your tunnel vision. And again, it's a safe space where you can share ideas or aspirations that you don't feel silly about. Sometimes if you're like, maybe you've been working somewhere making, $50,000, $60,000 a year, and then you go, I want to start my own business and I want to be a millionaire. Sometimes you can feel scared to kind of share that idea with people close to you because a lot of people are comfortable with you where you're at. So having a coach is a place where you can have that dialogue without that judgment. And certainly I think it's 2 o'clock now, so if you need to go, I'll stay on for a few minutes if that's okay, Scott. But I want to answer, I think we've got one more question, but if you need to go, I want to respect your time.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so Mark asks, and if this is helpful, guys, if you see I put like a Y in the chat or thumbs up or whatever, I hope that's helpful. Is everybody, was that sufficient answer to that question? All right, so one more example on the coaching side. Who here knows who Tom Brady is? Throw a Y in the chat or put your hand up on the, right? We all know who Tom Brady is, right? So Tom Brady has, just for, let's just keep it to his professional career, right? He has a head coach, he has an offensive coordinator, a quarterback's coach, and that's just what the team is providing to him. Also, probably his weightlifting coach, and then he has his own personal health coach and his own personal trainer, right? He has a life coach, right? And these are a lot of people that are pouring in his life, and what that allows him to do, similar to the productivity conversation we had, is that he could not necessarily take away their responsibility, but he doesn't have to invent that wheel on his own. He's got people pouring into his life that's giving him direction that he can go take action on, so that he doesn't have to reinvent that wheel, if that makes sense, right? And so that's a really good way to look at it. And so Mark asks, while we couldn't anticipate the specific pandemic, we can assume unexpected challenges will come our way. What are some of the best practices to help you prepared across the 6 pillars for the inevitable? Mark, that's a great question, and there's a lot to answer on that. I would suggest the first thing to do is to think about that psychology question that we had in the 6 pillars. What 3 words define who you are, and are you living that congruently? I would take that exercise to heart. And if you really do want to have some best practices, definitely take me up on my offer to schedule that session. And part of that is that you will get the Pillars of High Performance worksheet that you can use on a regular daily basis to kind of help you with some practices and some thought processes as you're going through. Are there any other questions?
Awesome, Justin. Thank you for all the tips. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for all of you for taking time out of your day to come and enjoy this. I also just posted a little value-added tip I just came across a little bit earlier, where if you're wondering where your stimulus check is, you can go to the website I posted on the chat there and check out where your stimulus check is. So good luck to everybody. Stay healthy, stay happy, and we will see you soon. If you can, if you still have your calendar in front of you, a week from tomorrow at 4:30 Central Time, we are going to have a talent show. So Oscar Maldonado, get your guitar out. We've got singers lined up, dancers, G-rated, of course, and we're going to have a little talent show, network and action all across the country. So put that on your calendar, 4:30, a week from Friday. Look forward to seeing y'all. Stay healthy. Thank you, Justin. Bye-bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, guys, and before we hop off, just real quick, again, I want to honor you for taking the time here. I know we all have busy schedules, and you've probably been on a ton of Zoom calls. So, again, thank you so much for taking the time. And like I said, I really do love to pour into the veteran community. So if you do know any veterans, regardless of whether they're active in the transition or have been out for a little while, if you think that they could use some support or might value having a complimentary session, please send them my way, www.thechargeforward.com. Thank you guys so much.